What is crazier? This nifty jacket that I've got on today, or the SEC wanting 8, and I mean 8 teams in the college football playoff? This is Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Wednesday, everybody. Welcome into Locked On Big 12. I'm Drake Toll from America's #1 Big 12 podcast, Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network in the world. Thank you for making this show your first listen every single day. We will start. Greg Sankey, 8 teams in the college football, thinks that 8 teams, Tennessee, Vanderbilt, Missouri, deserve spots in the CFP. Not so fast. Then the ACC. Get this. Duke lost to UConn this weekend. The team with the second best odds to win the ACC this year, Duke. They are winless in non-conference, 4-1 in ACC play, and that conference is completely crumbling. It helps the Big 12 get more teams into the college football playoff. They just suck. Then Joey McGuire called out Notre Dame. At his press conference, called out Notre Dame. He said that BYU did it the man's way. They wouldn't play that big, or the woman's way, the strong way. Played a Big 12 schedule, a conference schedule. Notre Dame curated, these are my words, Notre Dame curated an easy path to the playoff. Joey McGuire commented on that. TJ Pittenger of College Football Addiction joins the show for all of that. If you hit subscribe, I get to keep my job. TJ, let's go.
Is the SEC conspiring? What's going on here? Did they not get enough love?
Unbelievable. This is great. This comes from a reporter, Scott Barley, who says, Greg Sankey on the college football playoff selection. This report says, I think there's a real scenario where the SEC is an 8-bid conference. I could full stop there and laugh for days, but I'll continue. An 8-bid conference. I've had many conversations with individual selection committee members, and we have discussed how Missouri, Vanderbilt, even Tennessee simply deserve to be in the playoffs. It's a no-brainer that the SEC has carved out at least 6 to 8 spots in the playoffs. Now, Scott goes on to say that he thinks that 6 would be where the SEC gets when the dust settles. And Drake Toll would say, what an idiot across the board. We live in a society, TJ, where no longer do you actually win the games to get in. Now you lobby your way into the March Madness basketball tournament or the college football playoff. Or I've seen baseball coaches come to the podium, sit there and say, this is my resume and how I think that we should stack up and we should make the playoff. Now it's all a lobbying game. And if it's true that Greg Sankey is in the back pocket of these people on the committee, talking to the coaches on the committee, to the reporters on the committee, to the politicians that somehow get to be on the committee, I think it's the most SEC thing ever. And the pompous nature of the way the conference acts is something that shouldn't shock anybody or surprise anybody. This is how commissioners talk. That's how you see the Narduzzi quote this week for Pitt.
Yes.
The whole thing he did, this is how coaches and commissioners talk now. Narduzzi saying that he could lose by 100 to Notre Dame and he doesn't even care as long as they win the ACC and get into the college football playoff. That is the era we are in college sports. The transfer portal, NIL are killing this. No, people in power, commissioners, coaches, presidents, board chairs. Mack Rhodes this week, the board chair of the College Football Playoff Committee, putting his hands around the neck of a Baylor coach on the sideline, or his hands on a player and cussing him out on the sideline. None of this is good. And all boils down to people in power abusing that power, pushing that power. And TJ, the SEC wants 12 college football playoff teams so they could get it.
Well, they're going to expand to 16 next year, I think, so that they can get more teams in, because there's a very real scenario where here's my playoff take. And I've said this a couple of times on the channel, so sorry if you've heard me say this, but it feels like the SEC has 4 teams pretty locked in: Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss, and A&M. Right? Feels like the Big Ten probably has 3. Like, I think Oregon can afford a loss after beating Iowa, but let's say the Big Ten has 3. So Ohio State, Indiana, and Oregon, right? Chaos scenarios could change this. Feels like Notre Dame is going to make it in. So there's number 8. The Big 12 champion is going to make it in. Let's call that Texas Tech. The ACC champion, though they likely don't deserve it, is going to make it in, no matter who that is. The group of 5 is going to get one. And then there's one spot left. that spot to me comes down to probably 4 teams. Maybe there's a chaos scenario where another team could get in, but all of these teams probably need to win out. And those 4 teams to me are Texas, Oklahoma, Vandy, and BYU. Like that, those are the only. Now, if chaos happens and somebody loses 3 games at the top, or Georgia drops to Texas and Georgia Tech to finish the year, then I think Georgia's out and somebody else will jump them, like Texas will jump in or something. But Texas can eliminate themselves with a loss the rest of the way. Oklahoma plays in Tuscaloosa this week. That'll be tough, but if they lose it, I think they're out. Vandy has to play Tennessee at the end of the year, though Vandy could finish 10-2. And then again, if BYU was to win out, then they'd be in, and then maybe Texas Tech would be that team that slides in. Those are really the only 4 teams that I can see with 3 weeks to go that could realistically make it. And so this idea that the SEC could get, like, I think at best the SEC could get a 5th team. Like, I think Texas, if they go 10-2 with wins over Georgia and A&M to finish the year, 2 top 5 teams. Yeah, I mean, Texas should get in at that point. Yeah. Like, I don't even think your most anti-SEC person in the world could argue that, yeah, Texas has a bad loss to Florida and a loss to the number 1 team in the country, and they should get in by beating 2 top 5 teams in the last 3 weeks. I don't think they do that, and so I don't think they do get in. But this idea that they could get more than 5 to me is insane. I mean, you'd need the ultimate chaos scenario. You need Notre Dame to drop a couple. You would need Oregon to drop to Washington and USC, and hope that USC doesn't then win out, because USC would be in at 10-2. I don't really see how this is a possibility. Although I do think it speaks to your larger point of, the games have never meant less. And we are just in a scenario.
And the logos have never meant more, may I add?
Yeah, it just means more. Yeah. It really does. Like, it is because we factor, see, like with the BCS, you didn't get this. And the reason why is because it was just an algorithm, right? We didn't even know the word algorithm back then, but it was just a formulaic algorithm, and it was all plugged into computers. And the computers determined who went and who did this and who did that. And there was no bargaining, and there was no petitioning, and there was no conferences tweeting graphics of, I saw the ACC tweeted a stat graphic of Miami versus Notre Dame, but they left the teams blank, and they said, which one would you pick? And it had the top 25 wins and record and everything else, strength of schedule and all this stuff. There wasn't happening back then. And so now, because you have this mix of eye test and resume, and sometimes they lean on resume, sometimes they lean on eye test, sometimes they mix and match both. Because you have that, it is politics. It is a petition by these and we can hate on Sankey all that we want. He's doing what's best for his conference. Like, right. If Greg Sankey was your commissioner, you would want him to do the same exact thing, whether you thought it was moral or ethical or anything else. He's not doing anything that's bad inherently. He's caping for his conference. Like, he's doing what Yormark and Phillips and Petiti should all be doing too. So I don't really blame him, but we all know that the stir that stirs the drink, or the straw that stirs the drink, the one that makes the SEC or makes ESPN the most money, make the playoff the most money, make TV ratings, do this, that, and the other, they get the biggest say. And so I think that's where people's frustration comes in. But this idea of multiple, again, the games mean less, and the way that you're able to barter and use politics and use leverage and use money, that is what the sport is at this point.
So what I'm looking at right now in the way that the committee has put together this 12-team bracket, BYU's still right there. And Utah is certainly right there for an opportunity to play for the college football playoff. And with Virginia losing to Wake Forest and being out of the equation, and Louisville losing to Cal, like, the ACC continues to shoot itself in the foot. There is a way that we see Oregon lose down the stretch. There is a way, certainly, that we see Texas lose to Georgia and Texas lose to Texas A&M, and for Alabama to win a game against Oklahoma and take them out of the playoff conversation more so than a one-loss BYU or even a two-loss Utah, because we know the committee really likes that Utah team. The Big 12 has an opportunity to get 2 teams, maybe 3 teams in, because of where they position themselves right now. And the idea that teams 9 through 13, 14 that are outside of the Big 12 conference are either losing or have really tough schedules coming up. There is a way There is a way the Big 12 can get multiple in, but I think the SEC has a baseline of 4. Like you said, past that, it's going to take some chaos. If our conference, if Brett Yormark can come to the podium and say, I want 8 teams, 8 Big 12 teams into the college football playoff.
Just put them all in. Here's an idea. Let's let everybody into the playoff. Let's start the playoff on Labor Day weekend. And the regular season is the playoff. And then at the very end of it, we take the 2 teams that we think are the best and we put them in the national championship. And then everybody else from there, we just set up kind of cool regional bowl games where we pit conferences against each other. And we have a 136 team playoff that lasts 15 weeks. We started on Labor Day. We ended on the week of Thanksgiving. And then we have some conference championship games. And then again, we just have one national championship and some cool bowls where guys can go and have a nice finish to their season. We'll give them gifts and stuff at the bowls. And we'll have kind of a fun matchup postseason. That I don't know if that would work. I
hate it. Throw it away.
It didn't work for 100 years. There's no way it would work now. So I don't know. It felt like Mike Lee going on that rant there. So, rest in peace to the GOAT.
Yeah. Today's show is brought to you by Supply House. I bought my first house in February. Little starter home. And you know what starter home means? It smells bad. And it's weird. And the lighting's not good. So you got to do all that stuff. Supply House came in clutch. Over 280,000 pieces for your home, parts for your home, plumbing, HVAC, electrical items, and the most trusted brands in the business. Real-time inventory, honest lead times, keep you from punting projects. If you need parts faster, Supply House has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer. Part Finder tool, 3D schematics can save you hours. Join the free Trade Master program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, dedicated support line. SupplyHouse.com. Sign up for free. Promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. SupplyHouse.com. Real people, real service, real SupplyHouse.com.
On to the ACC. The committee...
TJ, on to what's left of the ACC, please. Can we be... Please, come on.
I don't know what was worse for this conference. I got 2 things. And, of course, they came back-to-back. Tuesday night, a week ago, was awful for the conference. Yeah. Miami, I don't like them. I thought they were rated too low. Virginia and Louisville, I thought rated too low. Louisville has a better resume than Notre Dame at this point, or at the point of last Tuesday night, with a big win against Miami. Notre Dame lost to Miami. Their only loss being to their only loss being to Virginia, who was an overtime game that they lost, a team that was ranked higher than Miami. So if you think about it, Virginia or Louisville had a better loss than Notre Dame did because of where the team they lost to was. And they didn't have the second loss. Now, I know that Notre Dame's getting a lot of credit for losing to A&M, which is a really good team, but Louisville had a better argument to me than even Notre Dame did. And all of the ACC teams ranked terribly. Georgia Tech ranked low. Louisville ranked low. Virginia ranked low. Miami ranked low. Pittsburgh very far down at the bottom. And then they came out this weekend and said, you know what? We had an opportunity to prove the committee wrong, and they all blew it, losing awful teams everywhere. Obviously, Georgia Tech had just lost to NC State. Then you get Louisville losing to Cal. You get Florida State scored 40 points on Wake Forest, 42 points. And then Virginia puts up 9. I know their quarterback got hurt against that same Wake Forest team at home. They were in Charlottesville. The transitive property just doesn't work because Virginia also scored in the 40s against Florida State and managed 9 points against Wake Forest, bottom dwellers of the ACC. The conference has a massive issue, and we've talked about the conference having a massive issue for months now, years at this point. And boy, if this wasn't a bad week for the ACC, I can't imagine what the playoff committee does tonight.
TJ, can I give you the worst news of them all? The 4-1 ACC champion Duke Blue Devils will have losses to Illinois. That's not a bad loss. Tulane and Connecticut. They lost to UConn this week. That is bad. And they're 4-1 in ACC play.
Yeah.
The committee sitting down in that room going, oh no. Because you could see, TJ, there's a tangible scenario where Pitt and Duke play in the ACC championship, and Pitt has lost to West Virginia, and Duke has lost to UConn. And the winner of that game gets to go to the college football playoff. They may be ranked lower than that group of 5 champion. They may take the 12 spot from that group of 5 champion. And honestly, people talked about it, and it's kind of coming to fruition. What if San Diego State, they just lost to Hawaii, but what if a team like that comes out, James Madison comes out of nowhere, and they're ranked 15th, and the ACC champions ranked 16th, and the ACC misses it all together? That's still a possibility, especially with if Duke wins the ACC, Tulane beat Duke. They would get into the playoff ahead of Duke as another one of those conference champions who would get a bid. Now, I'm not saying the ACC will suffer that fate and not make it whatsoever, but dog, this is getting uncanny. This is getting nuts. This is worse. We were in a bad spot last year, the Big 12, about who is our champion, who is the brand, who is the good team. The ACC this year is led by Virginia, SMU, Pitt, and they all have like bad non-conference losses. One of those non-conference losses was NC State. What are we doing here? And it's great for the Big 12 to give you more opportunities for more teams in. But honestly, TJ, it's really good for the SEC, who says, look, if they can't get all their teams in, if they can only get one in, the SEC can have more spots. The Big 10 can have more spots, because I don't know if the Big 12 is going to get those seats.
Duke has the second best odds to win the conference right now. Now, Georgia Tech still has the best, and Georgia Tech has an opportunity because they play Pittsburgh and they play Georgia. And not that I'm saying they win one or both or any, I'm not making any predictions, but Georgia Tech has an opportunity for 2 ranked wins. Now, I think they beat Pitt. Not confident about that. I think they lose to Georgia. Like if you just had to ask me, like, and losing to Georgia, if they lose close again like they did last year, obviously that game was fantastic. Then Georgia Tech is going to be ranked. But Duke plays Virginia this week. Who knows what the status of Chandler Morris is? If Duke wins that one, they finish up with North Carolina, the Fighting Bill Belichick's, what's left of that program, and Wake Forest. If they beat Virginia, Duke is likely going to the conference championship. I'm not guaranteeing.
TJ, they lost to UConn.
That's not good. That's not. Now, they could very easily lose one or all of those games. I think, North Carolina, as bad as they are, would be favored against UConn. Duke could lose 3 in a row here to finish the year. Who knows? How do you score 46 points in Death Valley and then lose to UConn the next week? This conference is a complete mess. I'll tell you where this conference is even more of a mess. I'll call out the big 3 in this conference. It's Florida State, Clemson, and Miami. And Miami is doing most things right. Obviously, their last month has not been very impressive. But Florida State and Clemson being bad is so tragically terrible for the conference, because I was talking about Louisville earlier, how I thought before they went out and lost to Cal, I thought they should have been ranked higher. And then, that argument doesn't hold much weight after they go out and blow it. But if Florida State had the same record as Louisville, 7-1, whatever they were last week, or Clemson had the same record as Virginia with just one out of conference loss in a fluky non-conference game, right? Those teams would be ranked in the top 8. Florida State at 7-1, Clemson at 7-1, they're going to be ranked in the top 10 because of their brand, because of their logo. Because the top brands in Florida State and Clemson and Miami ultimately have underwhelmed, the ACC gets zero respect. It's a brand issue. It would be I'm not trying to dog any specific Big 12 team, but it would be like if Texas Tech and BYU very much underperformed this year and Cincinnati was sitting there at 7-2.
Like last year.
Yeah. Cincinnati's not getting the respect that they should because their brand isn't what it's supposed to be. UCF would be the same thing, right? And so when your big brands are not carrying the weight that they should, then you've got an issue. And that's, again, outside of just the ACC being poorly viewed and then everyone losing this last week and everything else. That's a big problem for the ACC, is that their big brands aren't carrying the weight that they should. Those aren't even good wins. Virginia beat Florida State. That's not even a good win. Duke beats Clemson. That's not a good win. Louisville beats Miami. That's a good win, I guess, but it's not a great win like it should be. So I don't know.
TJ, again, this reminds me a lot of the Big 12 last year, where we didn't have a king at the top of the conference, But this is an excuse for the committee to look at the ACC, not take it very seriously. And like you said, point to Clemson and say, how, Dabo Sweeney? We gave you a league where your best teams are losing non-conference games to UConn, a league where your best teams are losing non-conference to West Virginia. Yet Clemson still is below 500, 4-5 on the year, 3-4 in ACC play. They tried to hand the league to Miami, Clemson, and Florida State, and those three teams threw up all over it. This is a doomsday scenario for the ACC, which ultimately does help the Big 12. And when we talk about the conference possibly falling apart, boy, things don't look very good right now. Wouldn't you know that today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is exactly where I've gone during the NBA season. Yeah, I'm a Spurs fan. And the Spurs have been doing the winning thing finally. And not only is that a winning culture and a winning team, but it's winning me money. The NBA being back means there's no better place to get in on that action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, combine your live bets into same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. Keeps every game exciting. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game. With FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA, new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. At FanDuel, go to FanDuel.com. Do it today.
On to Texas Tech. Before we even jump into the main idea on this, how shocked were you with the way that game went down against BYU?
First and foremost, I was shocked that Joey McGuire called out Notre Dame here. So I do want to I want to emphasize that as we get into this whole spiel about Notre Dame, I was really surprised at the podium that now Big 12 coaches are firing at Marcus Freeman and company. But if you told me Texas Tech kicked 5 field goals, I would believe that because BYU's defense is that good. Tech has struggled in the red zone, and BYU's red zone defense is very strong as well. I watched them live against a Utah team that I think is still very good, and the linebacker core of BYU is elite. That said, if you told me BYU would score 7 points total, I know that Tech defense is good, but they allowed 20 plus against Arizona State. They allowed 20 against Kansas State. BYU only scoring 7. That's what shocked me the most. This game very well could have gotten even more out of hand, but at the same time, if BYU utilizes a couple possessions, doesn't turn the ball over, this could have been a 24-17 game. Just as much as it could have been a bigger blowout, BYU squandered opportunities with terrible turnovers, bad special teams play. This is just a sloppy BYU game. I don't know if it was out of character for them or indicative of what they'll do the rest of the season, but I was very shocked BYU didn't have at least a little better day offensively.
On the Notre Dame comments specifically, listen, there's a lot of talk about Notre Dame and where they deserve to be ranked, how much credit you should get for good losses.
Yeah.
Their only good win being that USC game, which I don't think is an elite win, but yeah, it's a good win. It's a ranked team. I'll give it to you. USC's got a lot of talent. To only have one good win and kind of get the recognition that they've gotten mostly due to their brand and having a couple of good losses is interesting. McGuire not loving it, not loving the Notre Dame love when he was going on his rant.
No, so he actually utilized BYU here. He said, I have a lot of respect for BYU entering a conference. This is from the Irish Network. Funny that they would post this. I have a lot of respect for BYU entering a conference and not playing an independent schedule like other people. Y'all already know who that is. He takes a shot at Notre Dame for the schedule they're playing. And honestly, if you look at the way the college football playoff has valued Notre Dame, their best win is a loss. Their second best win, TJ, is another loss. They're getting respect right now because of the games they lost, because they looked good doing it. It's wild to me the committee is taking a 2-loss Notre Dame team and said, we respect you because of the games that you did not win early in the year. And what's even wilder is for them to say, oh, well, when you beat Miami, it was a different Miami team. You didn't know that that was different. That was a different Notre Dame team. It was different. So we have this thing where in September, the games don't really count. The losses don't go, oh, well, they grew up and they got better. But to me, at some level, that's still Miami. it's still Texas A&M. Like, they didn't get any worse. They didn't get, maybe they got better. You cannot tell me that this game in September has to be thrown out the window altogether because it was a different team.
Yeah.
No, that's not how we do this.
Why play the games?
Right.
Why did Miami risk losing? Miami's getting less credit for winning that game than Notre Dame is for losing it.
Right.
Like, that's crazy to me. And I don't like Miami. Like, this isn't like I don't like the ACC. I don't like Miami. I'm just kind of objectively speaking, like, why even play that game?
Or really,
why even do that?
Or if you're BYU or Texas Tech or Cincinnati, go lose your first two games. I don't know. Go play Ohio State and play Alabama. Right?
It doesn't work that way.
Not for them, does it? Right?
It doesn't work that way for the Big 12 or the ACC. You're in the SEC. You can lose to a piss poor Florida State team in week 1, and it just doesn't matter. You're a different team now.
Yep.
And I understand. I'm not saying that games on Labor Day weekend should mean the same as games on Thanksgiving weekend. I think there is some merit to how a team is playing now. There's no doubt that you want teams that are playing better at the end of the year compared to the beginning of the year. But the way that we just completely erase week 1 results is something that drives me nuts in this sport. The way that we look at games in September and say they just don't matter is asinine. And so, you say Cincinnati and BYU and Texas Tech go play a big out-of-conference game. They ain't going to give y'all that same love. You ain't getting that same respect because when they get to the end of the year for y'all, for the Big 12 or the ACC, they're going to get to the end of the year and say, yeah, but they can't compete against the big boys. Yeah, maybe they went on a run in the Big 12. Maybe they beat up on the Sisters of the Blind, but they can't do it when it comes to playing against the big teams. Whereas teams in the SEC or your big brands in the Big 10 or a Notre Dame who has a SEC type cachet, like brand. SEC's or Notre Dame's got the biggest brand in the sport. Like they have the SEC type brand, even though they're independent. That works for them. You're allowed to lose early if you're a big brand in a big conference or, again, Notre Dame. It don't work like that for the FSUs of the world and the Clemsons of the world and the Big 12 teams of the world. Or the Miamis of the world. You don't get that same leeway. I mean, Miami lost to a team that was ranked higher than Miami, right? Like Louisville was ranked higher than Miami before Louisville lost this week. And we'll see what the playoff committee does with their rankings tonight. But Miami had a better loss than Notre Dame did because Miami lost to the number 14 team and Notre Dame lost to the number 18 team in Miami. No credit. You don't get that same kind of leeway when you're in the ACC or the Big 12.
No, and that's where I look at Notre Dame's schedule, and this is the point Joey McGuire's making is it's not even about for him losing games and getting credit for it like Notre Dame has done. They lost to the number 16 team, Texas A&M, not the number 4 A&M. Miami was a different team then, but A&M wasn't a different team. They've always been top 5 when Notre Dame loses to them, and then they got to play Purdue. They actually got to play the worst team out of the Big 10, Purdue, winless, the worst team out of the SEC, Arkansas, winless, and the worst team out of the ACC, Boston College, winless. They somehow built a schedule to play all of the worst teams imaginable out of the power conferences. It's nuts to me that Notre Dame gets to pick and choose whoever they want to play and get total amnesty, credit, whatever you want, whatever word you want to use. It's just, hey, yeah, we don't care that you don't play really anybody the rest of this way. You play a Pitt team that lost to West Virginia, and the Pitt coach came to the podium this week and said, full transparency, we don't want to win this game. Please don't bet on us. We want to lose this game. We are warning you. And that's the schedule, the Mickey Mouse schedule Notre Dame gets. They get to, TJ, Alabama, credit to them. They don't get to pick their schedule in SEC play. You got to play whoever's in front of you. Credit to Boston College. You got to play whoever's given to you by the commissioner. Credit to Cincinnati and UCF, whoever you have on your schedule. And maybe you have to play in a given year. If you're Oklahoma State, you got to play a really tough Texas Tech, BYU, and Cincinnati, and Utah in 4 consecutive weeks. If you're Notre Dame, you can go, I don't know. This week, why don't we play Syracuse? Yeah, next week, let's play the Citadel. By the way, I think the Citadel losing to Mississippi State, they should have jumped like 10 spots, 15 spots. We should let the Citadel in the top 25 because they have a quality loss to Ole Miss. That's what the Notre Dame schedule feels like. They can schedule anyone and everyone. And you can make the case like, oh, well, these games are scheduled 5-6 years in advance. Now that's getting shorter and shorter. People are scheduling these games a couple of years in advance because of the way that conference realignment has thrown us for a loop. But, I mean, outside of USC, when Notre Dame scheduled these games, TJ, let's play a game. Was Miami good 5 years ago?
No.
Was A&M good 5 years ago?
No.
Let's play this game. Purdue, Arkansas.
That was the 1 year that Jimbo actually did get a lot of wins. So 6 years. Say Miami 6 years ago.
Yeah, right.
I was thinking of the year. I was like, actually, they were kind of good that year. But I get the point.
Purdue, Arkansas, NC State, USC, Boston College, Navy, Pitt, Syracuse. None of those teams were good when Notre Dame scheduled these. They said, you know how we can concoct this? Let's schedule all of the worst possible teams in each of these power conferences. Hope they're still bad. And guess what? They are still bad. Yeah. Aside from, Miami and Texas A&M, which became a very tough way to start your schedule. But they just got to hang around, man. They just got to, as long as you lose those first two, but you win the rest of these against pretty much nobody, you're going to be okay. That home game against USC is the worst you've got it. You're going to be A-okay. We'll let you in. And so, Notre Dame's been dominant, but gosh, man, they don't have the makeup of a national championship team. They remind me of those Notre Dame teams that the BCS would let in our bowl game or to the national championship, and they get steamrolled by somebody because they just don't play. And Joey McGuire, head coach of the Big 12, came to the podium and said they just don't play anybody. It's a coward's way out. And obviously, Jeremiah Love, very good football player, first-round draft pick. I think he's awesome to watch, but awesome to watch against the Sisters of the Blind. Like, we're not watching them play legitimate competition. And I think this is a Notre Dame team that is setting itself up. Here's what's going to happen. I'll end it with this. What's going to happen, I've talked to college football coaches who said the same thing. If you play a group of 5 schedule over the course of your year, the second you go toe-to-toe with the SEC team, the second you get to the college football playoff and play the big dogs, you're done. You're done. No. That's this year's Notre Dame team. They're going to go to the playoff. When they get there, the first time they sniff competition for the first time in months, they're done.
Joey McGuire and Drake C. Toll both hating on Notre Dame here today. So that wasn't from me. That wasn't from the FSU guy. That was from Drake and Joey. So shout out to them. Sounds like a Nickelodeon show, Drake and Joey.
Yep.
Drake, where can people follow you? Where can they find your content?
At LO Big 12 on Twitter and wherever you find your podcast with Locked On Big 12 as well as YouTube.
Appreciate you, man.
Always fun, TJ.